Garvey lives, Mosiah lives. Proud to be bringing to you part 2 of our conversation with Elder Cecil Gutsmore and Brother Leader Bandaka, Jamaica, history, politics and culture. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Plenty things to look into, plenty food for thought, plenty pointers to do further research. In part 2, we explore Jamaica in the context of the Black Power movement of the 1960s, 70s and 80s, culminating in the Grenada Revolution and Jamaica's involvement and response to it and its implosion. And then we look at the period of the 90s in Jamaica, the premiership of P.J. Patterson and the Tivoli Gardens massacre that took place in post the turn of the century of the 21st century, brothers and sisters. And so much more room for exploration, brothers and sisters. Do take in the vibes and hope that you get as much from this as you got from part 1. Mosiah live.
The ground is hard. We chose this poem because it is very relevant to the times now, though these verses were written many years ago. But dirty tough means not just that the ground is hard, but the times are hard. So it's rain or fall, but dirty tough. The rain is falling, but the ground is hard. And dirty is not just a corruption of the word dirty. It's a real African word, D-O-T, dirty, which means the ground, dirty tough. Sun a shine, but things not bright. Do a pot a boil, bickle not enough. River flood and rain a fall. Rain a fall, but dirty tough. Nowadays, the times so hard. When you ask Maddie how them do, them afraid you take it, tell them back, so them no answer you. No care how much we da work for hard times, still in our shot. We da fight, our time a beat we. They might raise we wages, but £1 gone and pound we pay and we no feel no merriment. For £10 gone and pound we food and £10 pound we rent. Saltfish gone up, mackerel gone up, beef and pork gone up same way. And when rice and butter ready, them just go for holiday. Cloth, boot, pin and needle gone up. Ice bread taxes, water rate, kerosene oil, gasoline gone up, and the pound devaluate. The price of bread gone up so high that we have to agree to cut we hype and bread and all turn dumpling refugee. And all them maga smaddy, whether go on like fatty sin, all them they whether fast with me, I left them to dumpling. Sun a shine and pot a boil, but things not bright. Bickle none off. River flood, rain a fall, but water scarce and dirty tough. Oh, yeah.
Miss Lou, that could really have been written today. When did you write that, in fact?
Nearly 40 years ago.
And people called the TV station and they were really angry. You know, they were saying things like, you know, take that dirty rasta head gal off the TV. I left Jamaica in 1989. And I moved to Europe. When I left here, I had a jerry curl in my hair. I got to Holland and I couldn't find a black hairdresser at the time to do my hair. So I cut it off and started twisting it. And, you know, I moved from Holland to North Africa, etc. When I came back to Jamaica, I was wearing little tiny twists, which, you know, very, very popular now. And I remember people saying to me, but you can't go on the road like that. Friends of mine would say to me, but you can't go on the road like that. I had a friend who, you know, went to her office to drop something off and she met me down in the parking lot because she couldn't afford for me to come upstairs to her office because I was such an embarrassment with my hair. So I now went and hosted this television program. It was called Tuesday Forum, and I wore the Nubian knots. It was a program about study skills for young people. And by the end of the program, the station received about 28 phone calls from Jamaicans who were really angry that I confronted them by wearing a hairstyle, which normally China bumpy or Nubian knots, the proper name is Nubian knots. You wear it at home when your mother wash your hair on a Saturday, you wear it at home, you don't wear it out the street. And people called the TV station and they were really angry. You know, they were saying things like, you know, take that dirty rasta head gal off the TV. You know, how can they allow this woman to be on the TV looking like this? And I was working as a news editor with a radio station at the time. And the next day, a woman rang me at the radio station and she said, you know, I used to hear you reading news on radio and I was very impressed with you as a newsreader. But now that I have seen you, she said, you are a disgrace to Jamaican women. You're a disgrace. And she said, if my maid came to work, she said maid, you kind of know where her thinking is, right? She said, if my maid came to work looking like you, then I would have to send her back home. She said, you are dirt. Don't ever come back on my TV looking like that again. But, you know, my thing is, I was raised by two amazing parents, Mas Blaston and Miss Emma, who told me every day that, you know, I was gorgeous, I was wonderful, I was talented, I was bright, I was creative, the world is mine. And so I don't put limits on myself. Any limits and any boundaries there are is, you know, what I put out there. I have this sense of the world is mine. I can do just about anything because this is the way my parents raised me. So it didn't really affect my psyche, you know. But what happened? It affected the national psyche. Tell me something not good enough for your TV screen. How me offend your eyesight? Tell me something is a black, ugly, bumpy head girl. I'ma tell you something feeling right. Cause me some is a bottle, I not have no class. Trace me and got on rude. Tell me say an educated woman should have know a little better. I'ma tell you I'm feeling good. This is my hairstyle disgusting and chaka and tan bad. I feel like something out the street. And so I should have shameful left my house tan so. I'm a smile, I'm a feeling sweet. You see, the truth is, I'm not afraid of my own self. I'm not ashamed of me. When me looking at the mirror, I like the smile when me see I look on me. Me like our thick, nappy hair and our broad face. Me like our in and outer clothes. And best of all, me like when she turn up and defend and oppose she oppose. But serious, when you go fall in love with you and let go of all of your fear, when you go take the time tell God thanks for your life instead of fret about here. Because if you kinky or straight, if you black or white, transparent or opaque, God make all of it for a special reason and God don't make mistake. But if all you can do is criticize the Father work, then your life will be salt because God loved all of we and then look out for we even when we have no fault. So, Galang, Call me black and bumpy head if you want, but make sure so you say it loud. Because the creator love me and me feel good to be bumpy head, black and proud.
Tendai Mwari, be thankful unto the mother, father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Mudzima Mokoro. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African liberation and African power for all African people. Yes, family, you know, when they are again, because the people them did a call for part 2. Them say they want to learn more, you know, they want to bring the thing up through the 90s and into the 2000 and all them thing. They're very impressed with Elder Cecil and Brother Leader. And then want to come more of the vibration. So we say, all right, come and give them to come more of the vibration. So we are going to do that today. And welcome. And as you come through, please like up the video very, very, you know, expeditiously. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you can spread this, you know, Pan-African energy all about the place. You know what I mean? And also share it. Share the video far and wide, yeah. Friends and family. Make them know so we're there and we're discussing Jamaica history, politics, and culture today. All right. And so you would have seen in the introduction, yeah, we began by a little stage performance of the Jamaican folk singers, yeah, founded by a great African mama from Jamaica by the name of Olive Lewin. And she had passed by the time this particular performance that I was displaying was staged, but they were giving a recreation of Kumina, yes, the Kumina ritual, and singing some Kumina songs. And then we were introduced to Miss Lou, Mama Louise Bennett, yeah, and her poem, legendary poem by the name of Dotty Tough. And following that, we heard from Mama Joan Andrea Hutchinson, aka that bumpy head gal, and an experience that she had in the 1990s when she wore her natural bumpy head style on the television in Jamaica, and people vexed with her. So she wrote a poem on, you know, that whole dynamic and situation, and that is very, very appropriate in terms of where we are going to be beginning our conversation today, but more on that a little bit later on. Let me now introduce you to our guests for this evening's proceedings. And I'm going to begin with the elder. And you know what I mean, you know, dropped plenty knowledge characteristically last week, but we're glad to have him again. And this time him look like he's in his usual spot. Him there on him book them this time, Kings and Queens. And that's where we're normally used to seeing Elder Cecil surrounded by the book them. So we give thanks and welcome and greetings to Elder Cecil Gutsmore.
Good evening, my brother, and to our viewers and listeners. Good as usual to be with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're hearing you loud and clear. And with that, we are also going to bring through Brother Leader Bandaka, who, you know, again, characteristically dropped plenty information last week. Sorry, not last week, a couple weeks ago. And you know what I mean? It's beautiful to have him back. So, Tendai Mwari, greetings, Brother Leader Bandaka.
Tendai Mwari, Brother Shakara. Giving thanks and praises, we say Rumbid Zokuna Mwari, Ye Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Giving thanks and praises unto Mwari Nyakusika, God the creator of the universe, through Mudzima Mokoro, our great ancestors, for blessing us with this occasion and for allowing us once again to be in our presence, in the presence of our elder, distinguished historian, longtime warrior, scholar, and freedom fighter, Elder Cecil Gutsmore, giving thanks and praises and great works that you continue to do, Brother Shakara. We sing and hear your praises and heal you. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, Brother Leader. All right, so family, for the sake of introduction, yeah, and setting the purpose, yeah, it's very important for us to stay in tune, yeah, with history. Obviously, last month it was actually Black History Month, and so we took the opportunity to delve in to the specific history of Jamaica, and I use the term post-colonial in the promotion, and Elder Cecil rightly stated in our first session that really what we're referring to is the neo-colonial period. But I wanted to bring you into that overstanding through the reasoning and through the discussion. It was just to emphasize that we're dealing with the history of Jamaica from 1962 till now. Yeah, that was the emphasis there, and the reality of having to address the conditions of our people, the conditions of the nation, the conditions of the diaspora, yes, and how the conditions of people in Jamaica relates to the broader Black or African diaspora, the broader Black or Caribbean diaspora in general, yeah. And I'm minded that oftentimes when we deal with Black history, we do rightly look at ancient civilization and what we did, or we look at scientists and inventors and what we did, you know what I'm saying, you know, post after slavery or the enslavement period and so on and so forth. But not enough attention is paid to the political and economic history of our nations, yeah. And this is a woeful omission, yeah, in terms of us being able to understand and employ the true value of history. All right, as Baba John Henrik Clarke says, history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a map that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells the people where they have been and what they have been, but most importantly, history tells the people where they still must go and what they still must be. And so oftentimes as well, we look at the things in a very broad context, and sometimes people find it difficult to grasp the global Pan-African perspective that many of us as scholar activists bring. And so sometimes it's necessary to focus in and zero in on some particularities, and one of the ways to do that is to focus on specific nations, and then we can look at how the developments in those nations relate to developments in other nations, and so on and so forth. And so that's the general trajectory that we're taking here. Last time we went from 1962 and we kind of made it to the 80s, yeah. And so we're going to go into the 90s and the 2000s today. But before we get into the chronology of things, I do want to highlight the work here of looking at the cultural element, all right? And everybody that I played in the intro is a group of people who are central to the development, the evolution, the preservation and affirmation of Jamaican culture. Yes. So we can begin with Miss Lou. Yeah. We can, who I consider to be the mother of Jamaican culture. We can talk about Mama Olive Lewin, who is the founder of the Jamaican Folk Singers. And we could talk about John Andrew Hutchinson, yeah, who is in many ways is an inheritor of the legacy of both those two ancestors. Yeah. And so we know that Mama Louise Bennett was big things, yeah, in Jamaica during the 1960s and 70s. And she's particularly well known for highlighting and affirming the dignity, yes, of Jamaican language, patois, Jamaican Creole, or just Jamaican as it goes, yeah? And so I want to ask you both, Elder Cecil, Brother Leader, to give an assessment of the work of Miss Lou on Jamaican people, Jamaican culture, and by implication, the politics associated with both. Anybody can go first.
I would like to hear Brother Leader first. I'm sorry to put you on like that, my brethren, but I know you will come forward.
That's fine. Tendai Mwari. I would have been very happy to have given way to my elder Cecil Gutsmore, precisely because he is an elder, and I know he is an elder with a wealth of knowledge and information. But I'm equally happy to be instructed by him to go first. So I humble myself to and receive his instruction. Not least because I am greatly and profoundly in awe of Mama Louise Bennett, Miss Lou, as she was affectionately known in Jamaica when I was growing up. Miss Lou, let me just say that she was born in, so I think it's the 7th of September in the year 1919 and passed away in the year 2006. And she became a powerful, iconic symbol in Jamaica because of the way she took on the issue of legitimizing the language, the popular language of the people of Jamaica, popularly known as Patois, and defined as broken English. The Patois is defined as broken English. But those of us who understand the history, those of us who understand the dynamics of the language they call Patois and misnomer broken English will know it's broken African. It is a broken African language. Why do we say that? Because we Africans were brought as enslaved human beings out of Africa into the Caribbean, and we were brutally taken through a process they call slave breaking. Slave breaking, or they also call it seasoning. And the purpose of that was to break us out of our nature of being, which is African. Part of that was to stop us from speaking our African language. And so our African language was demonized. Our African language was criminalized. It was a crime on the plantation for us to speak a word in our African language or to use our African names. We were whipped out of our African names, the use of our African names. And so the breaking reflected also in the language, the Patois that is spoken in Jamaica was the African naturally holding on to our natural tongue, whilst English was being forced down our throats. Nature forced us to hold on to the rhythm, to the dynamics of our indigenous tongue. We couldn't separate ourselves. It was so innate in us. And so the syntax of what we call Patois is African. Some of the actual words of what we call Patois is African. Mama Louise Bennett grew up in a colonial Jamaica where Patois was demonized. Patois was rendered something that belonged to illiterate, backward people. Mm-hmm. But she said growing up, she grew up in a society and you know, whereas there were adults around her who disassociated from Patois, she enjoyed especially when she went to the country, she enjoyed the rhythm and the rituals that she witnessed, the 9-night ceremonies, for example, the Kumina rituals that she would witness, or Pokomania that she would witness. It had a hold on her. It had a pull on her. She thought she was drawn also in that context to the language. She thought the language was beautiful. She thought the language was rhythmic. She found the way people spoke and some of the things that people said. She found it funny. She found it beautiful. And she was always drawn to it. And so she also had an inclination towards the arts. And as to cut a long story short, as she evolved as a young performing artist, when she went to do auditions, she would be required to recite a verse of Shakespeare or a poem from Keats or whatever it was. But then she started in her own quiet time. She started to use the patois language, the rich patois language that she had grown up hearing. She started to use the rich patois language in poems. She started to write songs. And as she evolved, as I said, through the performing arts, and as she became a name within the performing arts, she used the patois in the context of poetry, in the context of something that's called Jamaica Labrish, which is a form of poetry. It's poetic communication in the Jamaican tongue, the Jamaican language. And through that, she began to legitimize the Jamaican language. As a result of that, she became well known. And as the more she became known and the more she traveled the world using Jamaican patois, the more she gave confidence to Jamaicans, the more she gave confidence to Jamaicans who were also in the performing arts to use the Jamaican language as a legitimate form of language, and to use the Jamaican language within the context of the arts, whether it is in song or poetry or whatever. She made a tremendous contribution towards commanding respect for Jamaican culture, authentic culture as it relates to Africa, and she connected the the patois language with the African language. As she say, many of the word them what we speak in the Jamaican language, but them say a corruption of the English language, a good African word. Good African word that most of them come from a nice African language named Twi. And she say it with pride and she say it with dignity. Now, Shakara, you grew up in a household where you heard the voice of Louise Bennett as you were growing up, because I had an LP that I used to play on a regular basis. Also within our children's program, we had songs like Go down Emmanuel Road, girl and boy, fi go broke rock stone. Go down Emmanuel Road, girl and boy, fi go broke rock stone. The buggy broke, the buggy broke, the buggy broke and the house fall down. The buggy broke, you grew up with those songs, right, Brother Shakara? Yeah. Which other ones? Remind me of one or two. Jackass with him long tail.
Yeah. When the pen car come out and all them things.
Jackass with him long tail. Bag of cocoa coming down. Old Mass Charlie, him have a bulldog in him backyard. And when he get vexed, chain him. My grandson come to the picture. I must him hear the song, them know the song, and him love the song. Yeah, so I say that to say, I learned most of that from Mama Louise Bennett in a program. Some I learned from within the community, but a lot of it I learned from Mama Louise Bennett in a program that used to come on TV on a Saturday morning called Ring Ding. We had two children's programs that used to come on TV. One used to come on in the afternoons, somewhere around maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, called Romper Room School. That was very middle class, though we enjoyed it as children. But now looking back and making an analysis, it was a very middle class, upper crust kind of programming for children. And only in those days, not many people had televisions, by the way. People who had televisions are people who were considered to be reasonably well off. So we were lucky to have a TV in our house. So we used to watch Romper Room School. But then when Ring Ding came on on a Saturday morning, nothing ever sweeter than Ring Ding. So every Saturday morning we get up, we do our chores very quickly because we want to go in front of the TV to watch Ring Ding. And Miss Lou said that the show was to make sure so the people them get the something them where come from them culture and where belong to them. Because when she grew up, she did have to sing one song named Flow Gentle Sweetheart, and she never know nothing about that. She never know what it mean, right? So she teach them, they sang them, and some of them I've just shared with you, beloved brothers and sisters. I can say that Miss Lou attests that, and Brother Mutabaruka, in fact, has said, and Miss Lou attested, that he has said to her that she was the first dubbist in Jamaica. That what we call Jamaican dub will come off of the reggae rhythm, the style of poetry that come off the reggae rhythm originated with Louise Bennett. Louise Bennett was the source of inspiration for what we call reggae dub. Yeah, there's a lot more I could say, but let me just pause it there for a moment. Just to say, there are many Jamaicans who believe that Louise Bennett should by now have been one of Jamaica's national heroes, and I totally agree.
Long time.
She used to have another program called Miss Lou's View that used to come on in the afternoon. So sometimes when I come home from school for lunch, I would hear Miss Lou's View on the radio. And when you think back on Miss Lou's View was a critical analysis of and a social critique of the society.
Right.
But it was done using comedy and using poetry. But when you sit down and you listen to it, it was a serious critique of some of the inequalities and the injustices and the oppressive mechanisms of the society. Right. It is sad to say that, as I understand it, when she returned to Jamaica to live in Jamaica and was living in Jamaica for a period of time, that she ultimately left Jamaica to live in Canada because she was broken into on more than one occasions. That is sad. It is deeply, deeply upsetting and disturbing that she had to go to Canada as a safe place rather than spend her latter days in the Jamaica she loved so much and gave so much to, so that she could give up the ghost where she wanted to. So that's a sad note. But her legacy, her abundant legacy, lives on forever. And I thank her eternally for what she gave me, so I could pass on not only to my children and my grandchildren, but to African children I have been fortunate to have connections with over the years.
Yes, sir.
Tena,
my brother, give thanks for that very, very comprehensive answer there. Elder Cecil, anything to add?
One more quick thing. I must say, sorry. One more quick thing. One more quick thing. I had the honor of meeting Miss Lou here in Britain. And I can't remember what year it was. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was at the Yasantewa Center. Yeah. And she was just so. I met her and her husband, Eric Coverley. And he was just as warm and personable as she was. I was able to hug her and give her a kiss and talk with her. And I was able to talk with her husband as well, who shared with us that they had the blessing of traveling to the motherland. And he said, he said to me that going home to Africa was like a revelation. He said it defies words. It confirmed for him that was where we came from. I remember, and he said other things. So I couldn't finish my introduction, and I almost almost let the opportunity pass to state my claim to fame, which is that I, apart from being Shakara, that's what I'm known as now in the community, Shakara.
That's right.
Most of people.
Well, I'm also known as Brother Leader's son, so everything there.
Okay. It balances out. It balances out. But apart from that, my other claim to fame is that I met Mama Louise Bennett and was able to enjoy a warm embrace and a long conversation with her. Tendai Mwari.
Yes, I understand. So if Brother Leader leave anything left, feel free to make it up. No?
I'm going to struggle to find it. It's wonderful. it's a wonderful tour de force. Now, it matters, of course, that, as he said, our African-Caribbean ancestors ended up in a place where we were being told we were nothing and had come from nowhere. And that presented us with the challenge of having to create our being on the basis of what we knew we had. And Elder Bandaka spoke powerfully to a lot of that. The language of our people isn't, and I'm sure he wasn't saying this, broken anything. It's actually a very sound language with, as he correctly says, African syntax, and it's lexified. The language is a combination of some African words and some of the words of our European masters, and it's a proper language that began to emerge along with lots of other what the scholars called Atlantic Creoles from actually in West Africa before even our ancestors came across on ship. Now, it matters again that Miss Lou was the fountainhead of a cultural pattern of production that isn't just confined to Jamaica. So that if you look at the most sensible critics of Caribbean literature, they cite the explosion into Caribbean creative writing. They cite Miss Lou's work, and before her, Claude McKay, who Miss Lou herself cites as a source, as an inspiration to her. So these connections are there, they are very real, and it's about how our people confronted with the intent to humiliate and dehumanize, we fundamentally triumphed over it. And it matters. Our brother leader mentions Ring Ding. In my own childhood there was something else we heard, which was a program that Miss Lou did with Ranny Williams on the radio. And that also was fundamentally educational, fundamental in connecting us and me to our linguistic heritage, a different one from what we were getting in the formal schooling. It matters that Miss Lou came to public performance via Marcus Garvey's setup at Edelweiss Park and at least one other place in Jamaica that is known and acknowledged. So we are in an arena, if you like, a terrain of Jamaican greats that it is sensible for us to acknowledge. It is important also, and Brother Leader made this point, that the language of our people isn't just comedy. It's fundamentally philosophical, historical, cultural. And everything that can happen in human discourse happens in that language. A little example. My mother had a helper back in the day. Might have been a child or even not there yet. And my mother says that the helper said to her, Miss Gusmore, you just have to live as you can and dead when you can do better. and that's that's what the European philosophers call existentialism, right? And there it was in coming out of the mouth of this Jamaica helper lady, right? Who was in my mother's household, helping her to bring me up.
Right.
Now, it matters also that Louise Bennett got recognized not just by Muta, but by a whole pattern of popular performers. Anthony B. Acknowledges Miss Lou. Muta acknowledges Miss Lou. I don't remember if Bob does, but if he didn't, he should have.
I'm sure he did.
He almost certainly did. It's just a function of us not being able to call immediately on that aspect of his work. But Miss Lou connects also to people. I mean, Brother Shakara, you mentioned Miss Lou, you mentioned Olive Lewin, you mentioned Joan Hutchinson, and I could mention Carolyn Cooper, who, as a creative scholar, amplified Miss Lou in very interesting ways, and did something else that was really quite extraordinary, which was to deliver her inaugural lecture as to enter into the professorship that she had at the University of the West Indies. You know, same UC, which Rastafari spotted as you blind, that same place. But now he's becoming a professor there. And her inaugural was actually delivered in Jamaican, in Jamaica Patois, Ona language.
Yeah,
so,
she also writes in the language, like articles and scholarly.
What she does, and this matters, is that she's had columns all over the place. But in her columns in one of the places, she organizes it in such a way that it's in English one week and it's in Jamaican in the next week. And in the week when it's in Jamaican, she's trying to help to educate our people. She uses two what are called orthographies, which is a technical one developed by some linguists, and what she calls chaka chaka, which is you can write it down any old how, or you can use the formal linguistic tools to write it. And somebody said to her, interestingly, that the writing it in the proper orthography, although it was slightly more difficult, the brother said to her, it take the form of our own African language. So putting it into the official form, even though in principle it distanced it from everyday speech, gave it, for that brother anyway, that extra dimension. So I think you're absolutely correct, my young brother and father of the young one, to have spoken and highlighted Louise Bennett in the way that you have, a fundamentally important figure in the making of Jamaican and Caribbean popular and the popular culture at the points in this matters profoundly, at the points at which we're really functioning on a world scale as Caribbean people. It's precisely because those who are doing it are using, whether they come from us or not, they might just be ripping it off, but it's at the point at which they are using what our people created, musically, linguistically, whatever. It is at those points that a Caribbean literature, for example, emerged in the post-war period here. Fundamental to how that works is the place of our popular language, our Creole speech from the various islands of the region. Now, I think it's important that we just register, since we're talking about Jamaican Caribbean, African Caribbean culture,
Yes.
that in that particular small entity, you know, it's a little island that produces all kind of giants. Marley, Miss Lou, the long list, Marcus Garvey, and so on. It's a really phenomenally long list of incredibles. But I grew up there, and then I went back there twice as an adult. Once very briefly in 80, briefly in 95. These are long distances between the different times. And then I went back and stayed there for about 11 years in the late 90s into this present century. And it was in its own way a revelation, because in addition to having a world level ceramics, pottery, right? In addition to having a world class visual art, it also was doing something else musically, which is that something that had a reputation as a place of dirt and violence, i.e., dance hall. In that late 90s, mid 90s, coming on, dance hall had Buju Banton, Sizzler, Anthony B, and a whole lot of other young
Cape Town, you have to mention Cape Town, sorry. Go ahead.
Huh?
Cape Town.
You have to mention Cape Town too. For that period,
Yeah, man. Yeah,
you have to call
only
Cape
for
Town
them
too. But
who were doing remarkable things with, and in a genre that people had written off, because it needed analysis to understand what was really happening in it. And the analysis hadn't been done, or had been poorly done. And so I went back there in 97, and one of the things that I busied myself with was learning what was happening inside of this people's music, because, you know, on a genre of reggae, what was happening there. So to end, it seems to me that we have to acknowledge and understand the scope of the creativity that our people coming out to repeat of a situation in which the people them say, "We not come from nowhere and nothing." Did what Professor Nettleford, using Jamaican, speaks of when he says that our people were involved in the smadditization of ourselves, right? That is to say, smaddy mean me a smaddy, I am somebody, and I'm an African somebody. And it is that process of making ourselves from the bottom, rejecting the assertion. And it was thrown at us very powerfully in those songs that we didn't understand about, foxes and Christmas and locks and hunting horns and all of that other foolishness, coming out from under that stuff. And sometimes our singers and players of instruments denounced it. You listen to Sparrow. You find him denouncing the foolishness that we were, educated, in inverted commas, educated or miseducated into. So, Miss Lou, last point, really doesn't stand on her own. Fundamental giant though she is, she belongs in a framework of African Caribbean creativity that's monumental. And that we do ourselves an injustice by not fully understanding, comprehending, and celebrating and passing on.
Give thanks, Elder Cecil. There's so much we can say on this, you know, but we're done. Spend only for time on this. I'm gonna be disciplined, right, and try to move on. Except to say this, yeah.
If you stay with this, you will not be being indisciplined, my brother.
No, I agree with you, Elder. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I will revise my use of that terminology. At the same time, there are other things that we do want to get through.
And if you give me a half a minute to throw some names into the mix, I wouldn't consider that to be indiscipline either.
No, go ahead.
Come true.
You know, Bim and Bam,
Yes.
Elder Cecil,
Yes.
you know, contemporaries of Miss Lou,
Miss Lou
Hyacinth
and Randy,
Coverley,
and Mass Run.
Ronnie Williams, Miss Lou and Mass Run, were a double act. Came in a lot of pantomimes. That's another thing. When I was growing up, I went
That's
to
the
a lot
other
of
piece of
pantomimes.
the tradition.
Yeah, and a powerful piece of the tradition.
Yes.
Growing up, I was taken to pantomimes at Ward Theatre and Little Theatre with Miss Lou, with Hyacinth Coverley, Marjorie Williams, Elder Cecil. Yeah, the musician, brilliant musician.
Yeah.
Worked
Really,
very closely with Miss Lou.
and some people who had wonderful voices. My memory isn't as good as it should be, but there are some of them that had really, really great voices. And interestingly, I come out of the Baptist church in Buffalo. It's the back of beyond in a way, right? and in this church, the choir master is saying, and this is how we embraced and triumphed over Europe. The choir master is saying, we are going to do a ripping cantata. and this place, that same church that is celebrating on Emancipation Day with a dance that's in a way ungodly, right? And later on them even abolish it because of its alleged ungodliness. But this is the same church that is celebrating with maypole and all kind, you know, and some European stuff and some definitely African stuff. And the man is doing with some women who had remarkable voices. Two women, for example, called Daly and sisters, that had operatic voices that, you know, if you hear an African-American or Italian world-class opera singer, that's what these people were doing right there in Little Buff Bay.
And just to throw a couple more names in, Oliver Samuels.
Yes.
Yeah. Did a lot of these pantomimes with Miss Lou.
Yes.
As well. I remember one of the plays I saw as a child was called One Time, Long Time. And as I recall, both Oliver Samuels and Miss Lou were in that play. And what else comes to mind? Titus, you know Titus.
No, that name doesn't come to mind. I was trying to remember Jimmy.
Sakara would know Titus.
Jimmy.
He's a bit younger.
No, I know. I'm just trying to remember a brother with a big voice who died recently. Jimmy Tucker.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the tradition of performance
from the well-known Tucker family.
Yes, the tradition of performance goes right across the board from allegedly high European opera down to, you know, the day-to-day stuff that people cuss dance hall artists for doing. An amazing
one last name, if I may. And that's because she passed away very recently. Leonie Forbes, you will know that name as well. Leonie Forbes passed away very recently as well. She was also a cultural icon in Jamaica, who worked very closely with Miss Lou. You know, so,
let us older ones get out of your way so that you
No, it's fine. We could spend the whole show on this, you know. We could spend the whole show on this.
Further on.
Listen, you know what it is, the reason why I say I'm disciplining myself, because this is a field in which I feel very comfortable. So I know if I don't, you know, bring myself to consciousness, I can stay here all day. I talk about Miss Lou and Olive Lewin and so on and so forth. I will say this: the two things I will say. One is in relation to the national hero business. There is a campaign at the moment to have Bob Marley as a national hero because of his impact and on Jamaican culture as an icon of the music and so on and so forth. I don't necessarily have a problem with this. However, everybody has become after Miss Lou as far as me concerned. Miss Lou first, yeah, and maybe we'll get into why I believe that the campaign is fronting Bob Marley at the minute. I don't think it's anything to do with his politics or his culture.
On Miss Lou, on Miss Lou, Brother Leader Bandaka correctly talks about meeting her and how extraordinary that was. But in the time that I was in Jamaica, she had it could have been her 90th. I don't remember what it was, but she came home.
Yes, it was a 90th. It was a 90th.
Yeah,
yes,
and the celebration around her was extraordinary, right? People came out in droves to hear and celebrate Miss Lou. There's an event in Emancipation Park. Somebody said, I think it was one of the big dance hall performers, some singers, take down the naked people them and put up Miss Lou in Emancipation Park. So the fact that Bob, because of he's a world name, and very powerful stuff goes with that. But there is no way in which we should think that Miss Lou isn't and wasn't fully appreciated and celebrated. She undoubtedly is and was. And if Bob gets put up there in front of her, it won't be because she isn't properly understood and celebrated. It'd be because of the power of the greater power of the modern technology.
Give facts on the Cecil, yeah. So yeah, that's why I put that out there. Miss Lou before everybody, yeah. Cause plenty of people can get national hero status, but Miss Lou before everybody, that was
So
it have only for people making the claim, people are making claims for Michael.
I know. But I mean, that's like Miss Lou before everybody. The second thing is that there's a good book. Sorry, probably says to be
just a little important piece of correction. I agree totally with Elder Cecil about the magnitude of Mama Louise Bennett in Jamaican culture and Jamaican history, and in fact beyond throughout the Caribbean world. She has a powerful presence and significance. But just to say, she was actually 87 years when she passed away. She was born in 1919, and she passed away in 2006. I suspect that event might have been her 80th.
Yes.
But she was 87 when she passed away.
I wasn't giving a number to it, but it was a big number, and there was a massive celebration. She came down and did things at the university, did things all over the place on television and elsewhere, as well as in Emancipation Park.
I'll be honest, my recollection of lies of Elder Cecil, so I'm gonna double check that and we'll see.
You'll find it's correct, Shakara.
No, I have no doubt. Yeah, anyway, so don't worry. Also, Olive Lewin, is a name that I don't think many people know enough about. Yeah, as I said, she's the founder of the Jamaican folk singers, who I also grew up listening to, incidentally. But she's also an author and a scholar, yes, a musicologist, what they call a social anthropologist, and all kind of different things. And she has a book called Rocket Come Over, the folk music of Jamaica, beautiful book, and that details her experiences, literally traveling, doing similar to what Miss Lou did, traveling Jamaica and collecting obscure folk traditions and African spiritual and cultural retentions. That
are you sure that Rocket Come Over is not Olive Lewin's book?
It is only that's what I'm saying. Yeah, she had that's her book. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I thought you sounded like you were talking about a man. for a moment.
No. Olive
All
Wood,
right,
I'm
go
talking
on.
about.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm just putting it out there for brothers and sisters.
My mishearing.
No problem. Yeah. I'm just putting it out there for brothers and sisters who want to delve into her work a little piece more. Yeah, it's very beautiful, important stuff, and the legacy of Miss Lou is still very relevant today, because I know this because I've been in social media environments whereby people are actually debating me on whether Jamaican patois is a language or not. That legacy still exists today in terms of us downplaying the validity of a language. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do one show upon that subject there, on the language, and looking at it from the Chromantic language right come through to the standard English that we're speaking in Jamaica.
The truth of that position is that the people who haven't caught up with that are backward. Between your father and myself on this show, we've summarized what the position is. And there's a whole academic literature
that's what I want to expose
the position we put, including
100%.
a dictionary of Jamaican language and all of that, and something called Jamaica Talk, which was by a Jamaican born white guy, and so on. So there's no doubt. Now there's a whole heap of backward people who are saying something different, but they're simply wrong.
Yes. I agree. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Because we've got quite a bit to get through, and I wasn't expecting that one, but it's justifiable that one takes quite some time. There was one thing that I wanted to do with I'm afraid for going that because I know. Right, but there's one thing that we didn't touch on in the 80s, and I think it's very important that we touch on it. And that is the fact that from 1979 to 1983, there was a revolution in the island of Grenada. Part of the quote unquote English speaking Caribbean. And that revolution, it imploded from based upon certain contradictions from within that were exacerbated by an invasion from without. Let's say intrigue from without first and foremost, and then an invasion from without, namely the American government and the American military invaded in 1983 the island after the assassination of Maurice Bishop in October, the 19th of October. 6 days later, the American government sent their army to invade the island. This is important because of the fact that this had a significant impact on the Caribbean in general, but it's also important because many of the leaders of the Caribbean supported Ronald Reagan, Colin Powell, who was the head of the army that invaded Grenada, and were vocally in favor of the invasion, supporting Ronald Reagan, and Jamaica actually added troops, to assist the Americans in their invasion of Grenada. Can we just speak to this in terms of what was the impact of the revolution on Jamaica, and so what political machinations had Jamaica in a place whereby it was actively supporting the American invasion of another Caribbean island?
Okay. It's a complicated matter, especially because of how it ended. And it needs to be acknowledged that at the time that we're talking about, it's 2 years, the American invasion. It's 3 years after the Michael Manley's experiment was put down by the Americans. They didn't invade, but the way they used sending in guns and the opposition and the armed wing of the Jamaica Labour Party, it's just an invasion without a name. So by the time we get to 1983, it's Mr. Seaga who's in charge of Jamaica, and the army that's sent, the part of the Jamaican army that's sent to Grenada is Mr. Seaga's, if you like, army, just as another reactionary, Tom Adams, was in office in Grenada, and I forget the name. In Barbados, absolutely, yes. And the woman in Dominica, who was the
Virginia Charles.
Virginia Charles.
yes,
Virginia Charles.
the leading voice in that reactionary moment. So, and there were Caribbean countries that didn't approve of the invasion. Trinidad didn't participate, Guyana didn't participate, and so on. So there was a kind of a political split amongst us, but something extremely complicated had happened inside of Grenada. I knew it well. I had been a supporter of the movement that brought about the revolution. I was actually a guest of the revolution in the first year, 1980, and went down to the first year celebration of the revolution, which happened in 13th March 1979. Now, in a way, we were witnessing the last of the upsurge of, not quite the last, but an important part of the end moment in the upsurge against imperialism, the upsurge ending colonialism, and so on. 79 Caribbean singers sang about it, but we had Grenada, Nicaragua, Iran, and so on, right? And before that, 5 years before that, 1975, the Vietnamese had kicked out the Americans, and there were armed struggles that were being successful throughout Africa by this time. But we have to say that neocolonialism was being very widely implemented almost everywhere, including in what looked at the moment of them coming into being like promising African revolutionary sites.
Right.
So, having said all of that, Grenada's impact on the Grenadian Revolution, impact on Jamaica and the African diaspora was actually massive. Many people, progressives from Jamaica, from the States, from all over, were in Grenada. I went there in 80 and saw them, but their presence is very well documented. So it was a revolution that had considerable promise and considerable impact. Its leader made a famous speech in the US, which talked about the fact that they spoke English, they were English-speaking people, and African English-speaking people not far away from the US, in the US alleged backyard of the US, who were doing their own thing, and importantly, what the impact of that could be and was, and why it was so important that the Americans reverse it. Now, the Americans were aided and abetted in reversing that situation by a number of developments, which can be summarized as the revolution failing to manage itself successfully, right? You cannot be in America's self-proclaimed backyard with them watching you, pretending, conducting exercises that are called Amber and the Amber Coins or something, which is their name for Grenada. That's what they're rehearsing.
To clarify that, so just for anybody that doesn't understand, about 2-3 years prior to the invasion of Grenada, the American army were rehearsing the invasion of Grenada under the name that Elder Cecil gave just now. Amber and
exactly. And let's just take a step back. This revolution, I don't know if all your viewers will know, but it was carried out by the official opposition within Grenada. Its leadership were actually inside of the parliament. They had been in active opposition to a neocolonial government that was brutal and that they had inside information which said he was Geary was off the island at the time, but their information was that he had left instructions for them all to be killed. And Bishop's father had been killed a little bit earlier. Most of them had been beaten up or threatened, so they knew what they were doing. And when they moved in that way in March of 1979, it was preemptive, but it was more than that. Because if you go and look at how prepared they were, right, not necessarily militarily, they weren't particularly well armed, and it's just as well that Geary's forces were asleep in the barracks, which literally they were. And it's just as well that none of the police stations around the island were particularly well armed or resisted. So it's a peaceful revolution for those and other reasons. And crucially, it was massively popular because even though Geary had a party and a following, for years before that, half the island and more had been out in opposition to him, and he'd only stayed in power by rigging election after election. That is also well documented, not by left-wing people, but by official right-wing analysts of what.
Yeah, including the World Bank at the time.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knew how, right? And he had some people called the Mongoose Gang, who were the equivalent of the people in Haiti, the Tonto Makut. They were civilian, acting for the state, user of violence on behalf of the state against the enemies of the state, right? So that's how Grenada was. So when they came to power in 1979, they're extraordinarily prepared. You can go and look at their I forget what they call them, declarations or emergency decrees, the whole series of them. All of them well prepared, all of them well thought through, and they knew exactly what they were doing, right? So they weren't incompetent, they weren't inexpert. They knew exactly what they were doing. And then they proceeded to transform an economy simply by running it properly, simply by making links that Geary hadn't previously been able to exploit, by relating to the Arab world, by relating to Cuba, etc., etc., etc. So an extraordinary thing was happening there. What else do we need to know? Because the initial group was small and they were trying to do stuff that required a bigger body of cadre to run, they had to try to develop the human machinery, call it a party or what have you, to run the revolution. And they ran into trouble round that. They also ran into trouble round how the leadership was to be conducted. And even though it's denied, the truth of the matter is that coming out of a history of cooperative and joint leadership, there was competition between Bishop and Cord. And Cord did something that's, in my view, unforgivable, which is to resign from one of his offices, not from both, to watch a crisis develop within the party, and then to be called back by the party as the solution, and for the party to adopt a proposal of joint leadership, which fundamentally endangered Morris, because part of the way that proposal was presented was that Morris was a little bit, this is what they said and thought, petty bourgeois, and here was the alternative man who wasn't petty bourgeois at all, but a firm theorist, a man who knew how to run his family, etc., 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 who never had a woman on the side, and so on. So there was a kind of a quiet denunciation, and that endangered Morris. But Morris actually agreed to that, and then, having agreed to it, right, the structures are something called democratic centralist. And once you agree within the party to a party line, you can't go back on it, because that's evidence that you're petit bourgeois, right? And so all of those problems arose within that situation. They put Morris under house arrest. The people went, massively popular. The people went and rescued him, and before long, you know, all of that mess that we know about came into operation. Now, the Caribbean left. Sorry, I'm not hearing you, Shakara.
Sorry. I was gonna say I'm gonna do a show on Grenada at some point, yeah. But
Yeah.
For today, though, just focus on the Jamaica response to the whole situation. But
Yeah,
give that
well,
background, because it's
well,
important for people to know, yeah.
the Jamaican response was right. In Grenada in 1980, Michael Manley came along with Ortega from Nicaragua. I saw them. They were all there on the platform. So that's one moment. Manley disappears later that year in an election that people say he lost by a landslide. God knows whether that was true or not. Nobody really believes that, but you know, and that brought Seaga in. And Jamaica was a different place after that. They were actually killing people who'd been to Cuba to train. They, you know, they call them brigadistas, and brigadistas were fair game. They were killing Rasta, they were killing left-wingers, all kinds. I mean, what happened in Jamaica in the immediate aftermath of Seaga coming to power isn't sufficiently talked about, but terrible things happened. I mean, I know people who were still frightened in Jamaica in 97 when I went back there, of what had happened to them and threatened to happen to them, what happened to their friends in and after 1980. So the Grenada Revolution occurred at the end of the Michael Manley thing, and it happened in the moment when Reagan and Thatcher came to power, and that whole reorganization, leftward movement of international capitalism, international capitalist ideology, the substituting of for John Maynard Keynes' approach to economics for Milton Friedman and all of that stuff. So it's a complicated moment. One final point. Forces from Jamaica, including the forces that Trevor Monroe represented, had close relations with Grenada, and I never understood how they related in 83 to what happened.
Right.
But the left in the Caribbean, including Monroe and them, have never recovered from what happened in Grenada, right, because here was a left revolution, black left revolution,
right,
that was going really well, incredibly promising.
Yeah.
The people fall out amongst themselves, guns are drawn, ordinary people are killed, actually in droves. As they, you know, from up at that place on the hill, and so on, and I'm afraid that the Caribbean left has never recovered from the impact of that.
Go ahead, go ahead. Oh, you
no,
finished?
I've landed as it were,
All
on
right,
another program.
No problem. Sorry, Brother Leader, anything to add to this dynamics?
Tenamwari, that was a very powerful, comprehensive analysis, but it's such a big
subject
topic, that there's even so much more to add to it. And we know Elder Cecil is prolific in this area.
Excuse me a moment. I'm getting hot because I have on a thing, so I've got to get out of this hot top.
Take your time, Elder.
I'm not
Good
ignoring
idea.
you. I just got to change this. I'm
No, take your time. Take your time. Wait, take your time. Go ahead, brother leader.
Yeah, 10-9 Mwari. But suffice to say that the implosion of the Grenadian Revolution is one of the worst and wickedest tragedies that has befallen African people in not just in Grenada or even just in the Caribbean, but African people worldwide. Yeah, global Africa, so to speak. I think it would be equally true to say that the events of, I think the Grenada Revolution has to be seen in the context of the revolutionary 60s and the events of the revolutionary 60s in the Caribbean. Right. Coming from, we talked last week about the Garvey movement, and we would argue that the revolutionary 60s was rooted in the power of the Garvey movement. The legacy of the Garvey movement is what gave the foundation and the momentum to what we know today as the revolutionary 60s. And we can go back to 1959, the Cuban Revolution, which created an obsession in the minds of the colonial forces,
to say the least,
to say the very least, and it's imps who formed the governments of the newly independent Caribbean nations, who were under the control, under the influence of their former colonizers in establishing what were in fact neo-colonial constructs. And they were obsessed with the prospect of revolution. In the wake of the Black Power movement, there was an obsession. And last week, you might recall, I read an excerpt from a speech that Norman Manley, his outgoing speech when he was resigning from the People's National Party in 1969, where his obsession with the prospect of revolution was absolutely clear. And where he said that there's not a smidgen of hope of or likelihood of revolution happening in Jamaica, because basically the two neo-colonial parties have the people in Jamaica under their control. Yeah. So I think it has to be seen in the context of that. And also, we need to factor in what happened in 1968 with Walter Rodney being banned from returning to Jamaica after attending the Writers' Conference in Canada, coming back to Jamaica and being rendered persona non grata, and refused re-entry, even though his wife and his pregnant wife and child or children were living in the country. And then the uprisings that proliferated as a result of that, right? People rose up, people from the campus of University of the West Indies, and people from the streets, the grassroots. And there was a revolution, so not revolution, but an uprising that had a ripple effect throughout the Caribbean. It wasn't just Jamaica now, throughout the Caribbean, which culminated in Trinidad in what is known historically as a Black Power revolution that took place in 1970. All of this ripple, that would have rippled throughout the Caribbean as well. We know that the energies of the Black Power movement was still alive, and some of it had been absorbed by the people's the PNP, the People's National Party in Jamaica, simply because there were radical elements were in the party who were influenced by the Black Power movement and was pushing the party in that direction. All of that is relevant. All of that was happening in the Caribbean was relevant. And then we had the Grenada Revolution in 1979. Again, that would have had a ripple effect throughout the Caribbean, in as much as what is called the Rodney riots had that ripple effect throughout the Caribbean. The revolution, the Grenada Revolution, would also have had that ripple effect. The Trinidad Black Power Revolution, as it's known historically, that also had a ripple effect throughout the Caribbean. So there was that energy, that Black Power energy. There was that Rastafari, that resurgence of Rastafari as well. Rastafari was a big part of the Black Power revolutionary 60s. Then in 1980, we had the awful and vicious assassination of Baba Walter Rodney. Again, that would have rippled throughout the Caribbean. Bear in mind, Walter Rodney was murdered on the 13th of June, 1980. 6 days later, 6 days later, the 19th of June, 1980, there was an assassination attempt on the government of Grenada. The idea was to take out key elements of the government of Jamaica because a bomb was detonated from under the platform that they were speaking on, and people actually died. I think 3 women died. Elders, you can help me with this. And a number, some 30 odd people were injured. Some of them very seriously injured as well. And so, what that was about was the forces of neo-colonialism and trying to suppress the rise of the Black Power movement and elements. Remember that the context as far as Walter Rodney was concerned was that he was part of the WPA, the Workers' People's Alliance, which was gaining momentum as a political force that threatened to overthrow the neo-colonial government of Forbes, led by Forbes Burnham, right? The People's what was it called now? The People's National Congress.
Yes,
of Guyana. Yeah. So I think all of those are relevant events coming from, as I said, 1959 Cuban Revolution, the neo-colonial obsession with the prospect of revolution in the newly independent Caribbean islands, etc., etc. And all of these events that I mentioned, all of them were relevant. And Grenada offered tremendous promise to Africans, not only in Grenada, but throughout the world. And the moment that revolution took place, the American government moved into overdrive to destroy that revolution, and almost did.
Sorry, Bobby. Just to point out, the American government initially under Jimmy Carter, the left wing, right? It began with him, and Ronald Reagan simply took up the mantle when he came.
Very important point, because many of us see Jimmy Carter as a kindly liberal face of America, who meant and did a lot of good stuff. So that's a very important injection. I will leave it there. I hope I've raised some significant points to add to the wealth of information we've got from Elder Cecil.
So just to contextualize what you said and add it to what Elder Cecil has said, so we're looking at Jamaica, the Jamaica's political response under Siaga as a part of neo-colonial forces reconsolidating itself after this wave, after literally decades of an onslaught in terms of black and other revolutionary forces in the region of the Caribbean and throughout the world. So we're looking at a number of different assassinations and more quieter assassinations because people that were less well known, as Elder Cecil was saying, and when Siaga came in, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so we're seeing it in that context. So I guess you've contextualized Jamaica's political response in that moment very
just
well.
Again, just by way of context, let me just add, Elder Cecil alluded to the mid 1970s, 1976, 1970, somewhere between 1975 and 1976, when in fact it came on the back of Kissinger coming to Jamaica in 1975 and meeting with Prime Minister Michael Manley, and presuming to give him some instructions as to how we should proceed from here. You need to de-emphasize your connections or cut off your connections with Cuba, and stop doing this and stop doing that, because we're big boat here, and we will slap you in place. And and Michael Mann was not in the position, whether he had the inclination or not, could not have said yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, because that would not have worked with the radical element of the PNP at the time, and the radical elements of the people amongst the masses who were voting for the People's National Party. And so that vexed the Americans, and they upped the ante as far as the sabotage of the Jamaican society was concerned, and unleash its lethal agenda of propaganda warfare on Jamaica, as well as one might call underhanded military warfare, putting guns, infiltrating guns into the Caribbean, drugs into the Caribbean, and through unscrupulous politicians putting guns in the hands of hungry young men to point in the direction of other hungry young men and blow each other's brains out. And that is, and there was also an organization called the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica that was established in 1976, precisely to assist the Jamaica Labour Party to fund and assist. And this is really, a conglomerate of big business, right? The banking system, the multinational, the market, as it were, the multinational corporations, all of these foreign companies defending and protecting their interests in Jamaica. And they back the Jamaica Labour Party with their fundings and whatever other resources to bring them into power. And since then, what they have done is commandeer control over both parties. And so they now fund both parties and manipulate both parties to protect their interests, whichever one is in power.
Give facts for that. I see others want to say one more thing.
That was a Siaga who dutifully sent forces, and just far be it from me to try and correct my elder, but the soldiers that he sent to Grenada were not Siaga soldiers. They were Queen Elizabeth's soldiers.
I agree with you, and it matters that because of the international improprieties of that moment, both Margaret Thatcher and Queen Elizabeth had some difficulty. I mean, they wanted it to happen, but they expressed a certain reservation about America invading an allegedly British territory. But it was all sorted in.
Elder Cecil.
Sorry, go on.
I've never bought into that propaganda.
No, I haven't bought into it either. But
from what I understand though, the issue that Maggie had was that Roland, he never tell her before him go on with the thing.
Exactly.
That's it.
And I say, no, it matters that I said that they wanted it to happen. So it was a discussion about formalities.
Yeah.
Their man, Schoon, the Governor General,
the Governor
was
General.
in charge anyway inside of the island.
And there's video evidence of this. Sorry, go on.
And providing,
Schoon was Grenada.
Huh?
No,
Schoon was Grenada.
That's what he's saying. That's what
in charge of Grenada.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And
Oh, yes.
authorizing on
Yeah.
behalf of the Queen
Of the
stuff
Queen,
that Maggie and the Queen were saying they objected to.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mind just went. I just had a senior moment. My mind just went to Jamaica.
No.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right to say that it was just about formalities. Of course, we mustn't buy into the the claim that Maggie and them objected, because they really objected. They didn't.
And you see, protocol tells us that no, there was more to it than that. The army of Jamaica cannot be
deployed
by the Prime Minister of Jamaica. The Prime Minister does not have the power to deploy the army. It has to be the Governor General who acts on behalf of Queen Elizabeth or the monarch. Sorry, the monarch of Britain at the time. So now it would be. Go ahead.
No. I'm agreeing with you.
And most certainly, the Governor General of Jamaica at the time had deployed the army and sent the army to Grenada, and so by Ishan, it would have gone through the Foreign Office.
As long as we're not in the process excluding Mr. Siaga, because
no.
It's a process,
the Jamaican Constitution, does state. Sorry, Bobby. The Jamaican Constitution does state that the Governor General acts under the advice.
I was just going to say
of the Prime Minister of the country.
The advice must have come from the Prime Minister. The Governor General, as a matter of protocol, is not going to unilaterally deploy the army. So you are absolutely correct. He has to be advised to do by the Prime Minister. So he cannot be absolute.
And yet, in that same instance that we're talking about, the Governor General in Grenada cannot have been advised by any Prime Minister to approve the invasion.
Absolutely.
This is very true.
Absolutely.
This is very
Absolutely.
It's interesting to hear Schoon, the Governor General of Grenada at that time, speak, because you have no idea that he's actually born in anywhere in the Caribbean.
Strong English accent. Paul Schoon.
Strong English accent. Okay, we're gonna move on. A reading recommendation because I like to do that. There's a book, which is compiled, I can't see properly, edited by Baba Tony Martin. It's in 2 parts.
There are 3 volumes of that.
3 volumes, sorry. Yes, you're correct. I've only got the second part. The first and the third seem to be thoroughly out of print at the moment.
No, they're not out of print. They're just incredibly expensive to buy.
That's true.
They are out of print, but we have the same trouble. I have 2 copies of that, volume 2. And cannot get, because I didn't buy them originally, volume 1 or volume 3.
I've got volume 1 in a PDF, but it's called in Nobody's Backyard, the Grenada Revolution in its own words. So you get a lot of information that literally documents from the ground, speeches and policies of the government and their reports and so on and so forth. So this is a good one. Again, in Nobody's Backyard, the Grenada Revolution in its own words, edited by Baba Tony Martin. All right. So
could I add in what happened in Grenada is extraordinarily important. I really do believe that the failure of that revolution that we're still living with
100%
as Caribbean people, and the accounts of it that have come out recently, including what Cord says, attention really has to be paid to that stuff. Inside of one of Cord's books, there's a story about the Grenadans asking the Russians to help them to prepare militarily for the American invasion. And Cord says they're in Moscow, presumably, and they're talking to the Russians, the Soviet people, and the Soviet general says, if what you're saying is true, you need much more than you're asking for. and we're prepared to send it.
Right.
And they did.
Right.
But the Grenadans weren't actually trained or ready to receive this stuff. So it ended up in Cuba.
Yeah.
With the Cubans ready to send it, but the Grenadans not ready to retrieve it, to receive it, because they simply didn't have the training. So two terrible things happened. One is that the invasion came before the Grenadans were ready to fight it off. And the other
to be fair,
thing,
to be fair on this, so I'm not. It's even. I'm going in something myself, but I think about these things sometimes, and it's like Grenada is a simple as I take it, is a small island. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I know that Jamaica, go like say Jamaica not well big, you know, but Jamaica is a small island too, and Grenada is smaller than.
It's tiny in comparison.
And at the time, the population was about what 100,000.
100,000 plus,
right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying, people, right? So the big, right, nation of millions, yeah. that the size of the American military is probably surpasses the size of the
Grenadian
population, right?
By
you know
a long way, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So in that respect, the only way the proper defense could have actually taken place is if there wasn't breaches like Dominica and Barbados and Jamaica, that were supporting.
No, with respect.
Yes.
With respect, they provided the ideological cover.
Yes.
But that was an operation planned by
planned
by Powell.
Yes.
And the Powell principle was overwhelming force.
Yeah.
So so what was happened negatively on the Grenadian side, not that they would necessarily have won, but they weren't yet ready to receive and use arms that had been sent to them by at their request by the Soviet Union. Most of it was still in Cuba. One, and they had a militia. The militia was very well trained and would have put up quite a good show against the Americans, but for the fact that because of what had happened in the preceding 2 or 3 weeks, the leadership didn't trust the people. And so a lot of the arms that should have been with the militia weren't with them. And all of that matters.
Understood.
Yeah. So
family,
it's something that we have to understand in detail.
Yes.
I think another thing that we need to understand.
Go ahead. This is rifle.
I think another thing that we need to understand of equal importance is the human impact of what happened on the 13th of June 1980 in Guyana.
Yes.
And then what happened 6 days later in Grenada.
Yes.
Think about these young men, and most of them were young men in their 30s. Some of them were in their 20s. Yeah. The oldest among them would have been in their 40s.
True. Seriously.
Think about the impact of this on them. Walter Rodney is assassinated by way of a bomb. A bomb goes off intended to take out the leading elements of the Grenadian government. Think about how much they must have been living on the nerve, the edge of the nerve.
Yes.
After that, and the implosion came 3 years later after a buildup of stress. This in no small way has everything to do with the pressure that was mounted on them by the American government. Go ahead, Elder.
And one little thing. I said before that I was there for the first anniversary of the revolution.
Yes.
And what you're saying about how young the leadership was, I knew some of them kind of quite personally. But what you're saying about that matters. But the other thing that was already visible to me, and I don't know how many people have looked closely at Morris in that famous speech of his in the US, right? If you look, he's tired. And they were already exhausted in 1980. right?
Yeah.
Meeting upon meeting, just incredible. And those pressures too.
And trying to run a country.
Yes. In
And to
addition,
stave off
yes,
attacks from
yeah. And so what you call the human dimension is there, and it's even there at that level. And when you go back and look at the difficulties, the challenges, they did miraculous things, but at incredible cost, and the human resources just weren't actually there.
Yeah.
Family, there is I should also say there's a documentary that you can watch on YouTube called Grenada, The Future Coming Towards Us. Yeah. On YouTube. And
Say that more loudly, my brother.
Sorry.
Repeat that.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback now. Why am I getting feedback?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's a documentary called Grenada, The Future Coming Towards Us, that you can watch on YouTube that features like during the revolution. So this is before it imploded. But you're not only speaking to the government, but you're speaking to people on the ground, farmers and school teachers and so on and so forth about the impact of the revolution and a lot of the social organization of the nation under the revolution. It's very, very informative, and a good watch. So I just wanted to highlight that. All right, we're gonna move on from this point. And go on to the period of the 90s. Now I don't have anything specific to focus on as far as the 90s is concerned, but except to say that this is the period in which PJ Patterson elected as the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the PNP government, and he is to date the longest standing in a term Prime Minister of Jamaica. Now, one of the interesting things about him is that I recall in the 90s, PJ Patterson being referred to as the first Black Prime Minister, of the country, when technically he's not, right?
No, he wasn't. Yeah.
But I remember this being a thing. People used to refer to him as the first Black Prime Minister. Now, technically, I think he's the first elected.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
the first elected Black Prime Minister.
Because Hugh Sherry was not elected. He took over after
And I mean, I think also he was the first. He was the first one who embraced it. He was the first one who embraced it in some nationalist ideological way.
Right.
The other predecessors, whether they're first minister, the whole heap of terms that make them not prime minister in the way that he was. But the thing about him is that. You can criticize Patterson, but there was some African nationalism about him. That's the moment in which it was recognized that the sacrifice of Emancipation Day for the Independence Day thing needed to be reversed. So there's and you call it neocolonial manipulation because the PNP had to get back close to the people after the Siaga era and all of that. So a whole heap of things are happening. But PJ was some kind of an African nationalist. Right. Odd though it might sound. And you can see signs of that, for example, in the when you're in the Caribbean, you're effectively impotent in relation to the Americans. But when they overthrew Aristide, PJ had the gumption to say, "Come and stay for a little while." I couldn't stay for long, but so. I got to point it out just for those who are not aware. President Aristide was the president of Haiti. Yes, and was it 94? Well, he was overthrown twice.
Twice, yeah. But,
twice.
Yeah. Oh, no, but you can't be referring to the second time.
Yeah, I'm talking about the second overthrow.
Second time, 2004, I think it was.
Yeah, the second time. And
2004.
So basically, So Aristide is the president of Haiti. He's overthrown twice by basically an American invasion and or sponsored coup. And they literally came in the country and kidnapped him. And so in the second time when he was overthrown in 2004, PJ Patterson allowed Aristide to stay in Jamaica for a while.
Yes.
I must say, to a lot of Jamaican people did not respond well, yes, to Aristide in that moment. I remember this, yeah, that a lot of Jamaican people were vexed, yeah, that Aristide, the little Haitian boy, was allowed to stay in the country, yeah. Not that I was in Jamaica, but even this issue even made it to a dancehall stage where Ninja Man was on stage with Beanie Man, and they had a lyrical conversation about this thing, and Ninja Man was what's the word? Speaking in the voice of the people that were vexed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Beanie Man was telling them, so well, nobody can tell we all freaking our country. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they were,
No,
yeah,
it's
sorry,
no, I miss that particular representation of it, and us Jamaican people had all kinds of difficulties with Haitian presence, not just Aristide,
yes,
but
yes,
in that moment,
yes.
both people
Came
were,
over, yes,
were coming, and our response by that time it was again the JLP was back in office, and some of what was being said was dreadfully reactionary.
Yes.
I mean, anti-African, anti-self.
Yes.
So
You know?
yeah, those difficulties are there.
Just for this section though, I like I said, I don't have a specific point to highlight. Yeah, it's just that the 90s period. Obviously, this is the period in which that we in part one we spoke about structural adjustment, the IMF, World Bank, so on and so forth.
Yes.
Thoroughly embedded by this point, right?
Yes.
You spoke about the cultural change that was taking place in the late 90s with the resurgence of Rastafari and the music and so on and so forth. But is there anything particularly of note in terms of the politics and the history and culture of Jamaica during this period that needs to be highlighted and our listeners need to know about?
The word consolidated matters. So what was consolidated? Neocolonialism had been consolidated, and neoliberalism had been consolidated. The IMF,
yes,
by this time was declaring satisfaction
right.
with Jamaica, and what that was about was the fact that in place under the PNP for a big part of the time,
yes,
was a finance minister, clever man, who actually was educated up here before going back to the Caribbean. Forget the name. But they were running the Jamaican economy,
yes,
very much in accordance with what international capitalist forces wanted. They
free market economy, neoliberalism,
free market economy, borrowing at exorbitant rates, incredible interest rates, and the economy was crazy. In the end, it crashed in exactly the way that in 2007 here, but almost a little bit earlier in Jamaica, the whole house of cards fell down, and then the banks had to be bailed out and all of that. So and so that's one thing that I remember, and I was living there. And the other powerful thing that I remember is, and think it important, is the brutality of the neocolonial state at the level of its policing, and the extent to which there are no forces on the ground apart from victims' families, and very briefly the communities of the victims actually understanding what is happening and protesting. So we end up with a state of affairs in which policemen can become famous as something called crime fighters. And these crime fighters are really just police killers. And there's no controls on them whatsoever.
Right.
And there's some notorious instances. One of the worst of them was at Brighton, early 2000s, where 7 young men shot one after the other in a house in in Brayton, which is near Spanish Town, part of that set of developments that happened in that era in the post-war period, along with Portmore. So there's that, and there are some people who call themselves human rights activists, and when you start to try to work with them, and I did, so I'm talking personal experience now. If you have a real politics that, let us say we're talking about terrorism, and you say terrorism isn't what even Jamaican criminals are doing, it's what the Americans do, what the Israelis do. They say, if that's what you really think, we won't work with you. and that actually happened to me while I was there. And then you have, and this is not the 90s now, but as the same forces are at work, you have the Tivoli massacre.
Stick up in there. I'm going to come to that specifically.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. Well.
All right. Brother, anything to add? Yes, sir. Anything to add quickly? I'm going to come to Tiffany specifically after this. So.
Okay.
Oh, okay. There's somewhere else I want to take this, but I don't know if we quite have the time. But I think the point that Elder Cecil made in terms of the neoliberal agenda having been consolidated throughout the 1990s, bearing in mind that that Edward Seaga was a champion of the neo-colonial agenda, laid the foundations. In fact, it actually started even before that with the Manley government at the end of their second term. It actually started with that, and so it became even more entrenched in the 1990s. And so this actually meant, and what that actually means is that the nation's assets were really sold off to foreign concerns. The African people of Jamaica were just dispossessed. Land was sold off, the beaches were sold off, industries were sold off, and it was just a complete rape of the island. And it's funny because I'm sensing that Elder Cecil might, like myself, think that on one level, P.J. Patterson wasn't the worst of persons. He may well have had some good intentions. He's probably the least worst of the, in human terms, probably the least worst of a terrible bunch of so-called prime ministers that we've had. But of course, it's not about the individual. It's about the political system. It's about the neo-colonial construct called Jamaica, right? And I'll throw this in very quickly because I know we need to move on. Jamaica does not belong in its constitution, does not belong to the African masses of Jamaica. That was commandeered, that ownership was commandeered by the British and latterly alongside the British, the Americans. And they have the stronghold on the land, the resources, the economy, everything, that they have total control of that. Look at the Jamaica Coat of Arms, and it tells us a story. The Jamaica Coat of Arms that has a shield with a red cross. What does the red cross symbolize? yeah, the Knights Templars had a red cross. The ships that King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella gave to Columbus, muscle in and take over the island, had this, each of them had a red cross at the front. What does it symbolize? It symbolizes their religious and their military might and control. And so what that coat of arms with the what do you call it, the knight's armor above the shield, the knights is a knight's armor above the shield. What does it symbolize? It symbolizes the conquest of the people, the indigenous people, and then the masses of Jamaica who are African people. That's what it symbolizes. And that is the coat of arms that we Africans from Jamaica look upon with in awe and wonder and with pride. But we don't understand that it symbolizes their conquest over us. The Constitution, as we said last time, in the first phase of this discussion, the Constitution was not drafted by us. Norman Manley and Alexander Bustamante went to England to sit down with their masters, who instructed them to draft the Constitution. And by the way, the coat of arms, Elder Cecil, wasn't that adopted in way back in 16 something?
I don't know. I'm not sure about the date of that. And,
Okay.
and I'm actually learning from your analysis of it, because I've never paid any attention to it. Never personally paid any attention to it.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So that is the context in which, let us assume that a PJ Patterson has good intentions. He certainly has a Pan-African, he certainly has some Pan-African sentiments and profile. If you see him now, most of the time you see him have on some kind of African dress, some kind of African garment.
He's been campaigning on the exoneration of Papa Garvey as well for quite some time.
But then when he was prime minister, what did he do? He was prime minister. The Jamaica, the People's National Party is supposed to be Republican. That is supposed to be one of their platforms, right? They're supposed to stand for Republicanism. They've been in power so many times. What have they done to remove the British monarch as head of state? Nothing, including PJ Patterson, who was there for 14 years. So there are all those contradictions. Let me leave it there. There's much more that could be said, but let me leave it there. All
right. So Elder Cecil touched on Tivoli Gardens in 2010, yeah? Now, all right. First and foremost, Elder Cecil, just give our viewers a rundown of exactly what happened, yeah, in Tivoli Gardens in 2010. By the way, just as a point, we mentioned Tivoli Gardens in part 1 where we were talking about Bakawal, yeah, which was like a Rastafari stronghold, yeah.
That's where it was. They broke all of that down and put Tivoli Gardens on that site. Yes.
So 2010 now. Give us a brief exposition in terms of what are we referring to when we say Tivoli Gardens 2010? What we are talking about?
Okay. That point that you just made is important. And has to be understood in terms of the fact that in the 1950s, Mr. Bustamante was the MP for part of Western Kingston.
Right.
That the politics of the left wing of the PNP in fact drove him out, and he went and got a seat in Clarendon, in somewhere in Veer. And in the place where he had his seat, the certain Rastafari elements and poor people elements developed, and Mr. Siaga, with his knowledge of Jamaican anthropology and his willingness to mobilize violence, cleared that area and built the Tivoli Gardens settlement, which was the center of his own political constituency. And that's where he politicked from while he led the Jamaica Labour Party, right? So that's what Tivoli Gardens is. Now, inside of all those garrisons in Jamaica, some of them are PNP, some of them are Labour, dons, some people who can be more or less reputable contractors, but usually are contractors who are not really reputable, and men who deal in drugs and guns and violence. They are very close to both parties, and their key role is that the parties give them contracts, and then they half do the work and they recycle some of that money back to the party. That's the structure of what happens. It's been described in the Gleaner and elsewhere repeatedly. So Tivoli Gardens, after Mr. Siaga left the leadership of the Labour Party, been encouraged out, as it were, because he didn't really want to leave. And Bruce Holden, who had been his lieutenant in a decade or two earlier, formed his own party.
Can I just throw in the Elder Cecil that he had become unelectable? Siaga.
Well, yes. Yeah. So the party needed to be reformed, and part of the reform was to bring back in Golden.
Right.
And Golden was brought back so thoroughly that he came and occupied the seat of previously Mr. Siaga, in other words, part of Western Kingston that Tivoli is central to.
Okay.
Now, there are dons in all of those places, as I say, and the don of that place was somebody called, the first don, somebody called Jim Brown, appears to have got into trouble with Mr. Siaga and was killed in custody, burnt in his cell. And his son, educated fellow, spent time in the States, educated in best Jamaican school, don't know if I had a degree or not, but he was an educated man. Dudus Cook, that's who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, and he was the don. Now, I have to speed it up. It is known that there were worries about him, both at the level of the Jamaican government and at the level of the US government, right at the top. Discussions took place. It was agreed that surveillance would be in place, and the surveillance already was. And the two governments agreed that Dudus was involved in guns, drugs, and other criminality.
Yes.
They talked about whether he should be tried in Jamaica. Of course, it was impossible to try him in Jamaica because he's very close to the Jamaica Labour Party. So he has to be extradited to the United States of America. That's agreed between the two governments.
Right.
The only issue is how. And that was agreed to also.
Right.
And then the Americans send down their extradition demand, and the Jamaican Labour Party suddenly remembers that Dudus is not just any old criminal. Right? He's a key ally.
Right.
So they tried to hold up the process. Believe it or not, we don't know whether the money paid was government money or party money, but big money was paid to a reputable law firm in Washington
to
negotiate with the American government to undermine its own extradition request.
Right.
Elder Cecil, big money was paid by who?
By Mr. Golden's party. And the only issue is where the money came from. Was it government money or party money?
Right.
Golden said it was party money because if it was government money, state money, there would have been an extra difficulty. Right? So now, we know all of this because there were actually, after the event, and I'm going back to what the events were, two inquiries. One of them was called the Men at Felt inquiry, which was actually broadcast in Jamaica. And that was about exactly what I'm talking about, which is how it came to be that the Jamaican and American government, having sat down and agreed on the extradition of Dudus, one of the parties to that agreement then proceeded to try to undermine it, including saying that this citizen of ours couldn't be extradited in that way because it was a violation of our national sovereignty and all kind of that was actually being said from the top of the government. And then the Americans remind the Jamaican government, look, we sat down and agreed. All of what I just said is what the Americans were saying. We sat down, we agreed. And all of this came out as public knowledge in the Manifest inquiry. So you don't have to invent this. It sounds odd, but it's absolutely true. So the Jamaica Labour Party government is saying we won't extradite this man. And the Americans said, what are you talking about? We sat and we agreed. And if you don't, we have stuff on some more of you, and we'll come for you too, or at least expose you too. And at that point, they decide that they have to move to extradite Dudus. At which point, Dudus, who has a whole heap of money, is a don, and the dons operate by terror and also by inducement. So they pay school fees, they give people shoes, all kind of thing. If somebody comes and robs you, frequent the don knows who it is, and if you go and ask him nicely, you can get the person to bring back your things. Right? It's as specific as that.
No, sorry, Alistair. So can I say at the time, for people that lived in Tivoli, I remember hearing this. Tivoli was one of the safest places to be in Jamaica. Right? You know what I'm saying?
There was there is order, Don imposed order in almost all of those enclaves. What are they called? Garrisons that belong to the party. And inside of there, right, along with the stuff goes goes gang warfare. And the gang warfare is odd because it's controlled by the dons. And sometimes, as happened in Kingston, my time in Jamaica, usually there's a fight over the contracts and people get killed. There's a big contract to do up the Kingston Public Hospital. The two dons, the PNP one was called Zeeks, and the JLP one was called Dudus, sat down and agreed that we won't kill each other or have our own people killing. We'll split the contract, and you know, and nobody died over that contract. So this is who we're talking about. We're talking about people who have close ties into the system. Back to Dudus now. So, and he has close relationships with the people who are in Tivoli, all kinds of things. They've won the football team, cricket team, sports participation, and so on and more. So it's a controlled. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. We're hearing you.
Yes, we are.
I touched something, so I know that my presentation on there may have changed. I touched something by accident. So if I'm being heard and seen,
we can hear you, Elder Cecil.
Wonderful. So, Dudus has real influence with the people in Tivoli. It's a almost totally Labour Party stronghold, and he supports the people, supplies them with stuff that he gets from gun running and drugs money and so on and more. And so at the point at which the government, this is the Prime Minister is the MP for the constituency. So it's that close and complicated. And that is the man who's now going after, whose state is an army is now going after Dudus. Right. So what happens? The people in Tivoli dress in white, women mainly, and they say, if Jesus can dead for we can dead for Dudus. and they set up blockades
Mhm.
around Tivoli
Mhm.
to protect Dudas Coke from extradition.
Mhm.
At which point, the Labour Party government, who were its allies, set up a military operation
Mhm.
to do what it calls an incursion into Tivoli.
Yes.
Now, Tivoli, in addition to being a well-run, peaceful place, had this reputation in PNP quarters as being a site of gunmen and all of this. Now,
Mhm.
I don't believe that there was much truth in that. It
Mhm.
had been raided twice under the PNP,
Yes.
and nobody had shot back at the
Right.
PNP invading forces.
Yes.
And anybody who died or got shot by the soldiers and police who invaded. So one element of it was competition between PNP and JLP. But
Yes.
in the Tivoli instance now, it's all Jamaica Labour Party. The PNP aren't involved at all.
Yeah,
Although they are involved because a state of emergency was declared.
Yes.
Right? Because the Americans are saying, "Unafi extradite the Mande,"
Yes.
and the government has stopped saying,
Mhm.
"We're not going to do it," and they're now trying to do it. And so there's a very messy operation,
Mhm.
an assault on Tivoli, allegedly to capture Dudus.
Mhm.
Now, you don't need a gigantic military operation to do that, but that is what they did. They
Yes.
had some wonderful black military vehicles that just drove in through the walls.
Yes. Yes.
So the barricades didn't matter. They had vehicles that could actually go through, and that's what happened.
Right.
They
Right. Right.
arrested hundreds of young men who
Yes.
they corralled in the nearby sports stadium, probably the National Arena, I think it's called,
Mhm.
and killed possibly as many as 250.
Mhm.
The government's official inquiry says that they killed 73 people.
Mhm. Mhm.
40 odd of them shot close range, like so,
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
head. This is what the government's documentation says.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Mr. Siaga, the ex-MP, said at the time, I saw him on television saying it, that as far as he's concerned, 250 people were killed.
Mhm.
Other local knowledge said 150.
Mhm.
Now, there was a rumor that the state, army and police had buried bodies. There is a disused or largely disused cemetery that's called Maypen
Yes.
in that place. Repeat, I was in Jamaica at the time, and a man, handsome, young, bright officer came on the television to be interviewed about the Tivoli incursion.
Mhm.
The beautiful, bright, young female journalist says, we're given to understand that bodies were illegally buried in Maypen Cemetery. What do you have to say about that?
Mhm.
The army man said, I neither confirm nor deny that any of that happened. But please note that the Tivoli incursion took place under a state of emergency,
Right.
and the security forces in a state of emergency are entitled, and I'm quoting, to do anything.
Mhm.
That was his reply on Jamaican television
Mhm.
in 2010. As there, like it was like yesterday.
Mhm.
Okay, so the Tivoli incursion, government figures 73 people killed, 40 out of them shot in the head.
Mhm.
And then hundreds rounded up. The incursion was military,
Yes.
all kinds of terrible things, including weaponry that shouldn't be used in civilian areas or on civilian populations at all, a bit like the Russian invasion of
Yes.
of that place over so dreadful. Many people's places wrecked up, mashed up. Whole heap of people whose sons and husbands were taken next door and shot. The people heard their relatives being shot. It's dreadful, dreadful event. And then Dudus wasn't arrested in this operation. in this operation, he escaped because that's not the way to capture him.
Some sources say he wasn't there. Some sources say he wasn't there at all, and the government and Golding knew that he was not there.
Almost certainly. And so the operation at a certain level makes no sense, and the brutality of it is monumentally outrageous. Now, eventually, Dudus is caught in woman's clothes in the car of one of Jamaica's most distinguished men of religion. I forget his name, but that's who was driving him. I met the man once. I knew exactly who he was because he had a gigantic church somewhere in Kingston. And during a moment when we were mobilizing and organizing against the terrorism prevention bill, which the Americans had sent down to the Jamaican government and said, if we pass this, and they were trying to pass it sometimes without actually reading it. So there's a whole movement against that as part of that. And one of our public meetings was held in this man's church with him giving permission to us to hold it free. So
it's Reverend Al Miller.
Yes, that him, same one. Yes, in his car that Dudus was. So Dudus was caught, extradited, as he should have been without all this fuss, and tried, and is in jail, as I understand it, in America, using all of the evidence that was in the hands of both the Jamaican government and the U.S. government at the point at which the Jamaican government was had suddenly discovered that Dudus was one of their people, and they really shouldn't be deporting him, despite the evidence that they had about his criminality. So Tivoli is exactly that, an instance where the JLP government of Jamaica invaded one of its own areas, garrison areas, killed possibly as many as 250 men, detained illegally hundreds of young men who were actually treated quite brutally during the time that they're in there. There was another inquiry. The Manetfeld one dealt with the background to the Dudus protection and extradition. The other one was on what had happened at Tivoli. And the truth of what happened is in that report.
Right.
But the British, like the South Africans after Marikana, inquiries aren't about the truth, they're about cover-ups. So it both contains the truth and all of the decisions about how the inquiry is to be run and how the report is to be written functions in the interest of the state, the neocolonial state, the neoliberal state, to protect it from the worst. They've offered some compensation to victims. I'm still semi-involved with a little movement around Tivoli. It's very difficult to do politics that addresses, for example, state violence or land or beaches or any of that stuff now in Jamaica, because the forces don't seem to be on the ground. The trade unions are in the pockets of the political parties. They have leaderships that seem to me to be exquisitely backward. And so it's a horror story.
Give thanks for that rundown, Elder Cecil. I'm just gonna pass it over to Brother Lee to see if he wants to add anything.
Yeah, there's not much more to add to what Elder Cecil has detailed. in relation to the 2010 atrocity in Tivoli Gardens. And also, I think what's very, very important to understand is the role of garrisons in the political system in Jamaica. And what it represents, if we heard what Elder Cecil shared with us today, it represents a political system that is in effect a moral cesspool. You know, a moral cesspool where African life means nothing. African life means nothing. It is okay to waste African life in the hundreds, thousands, even. As it is now, the status in terms of murder rates in Jamaica is 4 or 5 a day.
Yes.
4 or 5 a day in a small country like Jamaica, amounting to over 1,500 a year. Jamaica is the second leading country in murder rate, second only to what's that country called? It's slipped my mind.
Somewhere in Central America.
Yeah.
You mentioned it last week. I've forgotten it now, but go ahead.
Yeah, it just slipped my mind. Anyway, Ecuador.
Yes.
Second only to Ecuador. Just think about that for a moment. 1,500 people a year. Now that's youth on youth killing in Jamaica. Yeah. There's also killings at the hands of the police.
Yes. Up to
Most
200
of which,
per annum.
sorry?
Up to 200 per annum.
Yeah. 200, 250 per annum. Yeah. And that is more recent figures, you know, going back a decade or more, it would be more like 300 per year at the hands of the police, most of which are extrajudicial killings.
Yes.
African life means nothing. That is what African people have been reduced to in the political system in Jamaica that is designed to serve the neo-colonial interests of imperialist forces like America, Britain, and others, Canada and others. Canada is there in the mix, you know, not mentioned very often.
Absolutely, yes.
They're in the mix.
Very true,
yeah.
very true.
You know, and there is no indication that this will change anytime soon.
Yeah.
Which means that we have to accept that nearly 2,000 of our, and it's mainly young African men, will die every year in Jamaica, senselessly and needlessly, because the context in which the Tivoli atrocity occurred, the context in which it occurred is in the context of the history of the culture of garrisons, which are there as protective mechanisms for the political parties.
Yes.
You know, you have Tivoli Gardens, which was before that it was as we said, Bakawal. You also had on the other side, you had Concrete Jungle, which in the same way was knocked down and built up and named Arnett Gardens.
Yes.
And the other man named Tony Sparling, who used to run that side of things. And it was in the same vein, a garrison.
Yes.
You know, mafia operation, mafia runnings. Yeah. And it's an utter disgrace. Yeah. And then that now morphed into, although it still exists, but it also morphed into something even more insidious, where you find turf violence between young people in the same area, basically, but this street mustn't come to that street. Yeah. And
it's the same thing everywhere, isn't it?
Yes, it's tied up with drugs.
Yes. Turf.
Drug runnings. You know, so you'll find that where as 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you, you have a whole area that was defending its, its politics, fighting against this other area, defending its politics. That's broken down now into sub area, sub area turf war between groups of young people in the same area. So it's even more insidious. Yeah, it's even and there's no sign of this changing anytime soon. And I talked last week about some of the experience, the lived experience that I had in Jamaica. I remember a friend of mine, school friend of mine, coming into school one day and looked like he saw a ghost. Colin, what happened? And he was shaking. Friday night, the previous Friday night, he's sitting on a wall with his friend, chatting. A bike bust the corner. And them just see a flash of light. And so when that happens, you jump off the wall. Jump off the wall into the yard. And so we're blurred, but so and so, I don't know what his friend's name was. Look at the man, nearly shoot where. When him look, him friend neck bust open.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Friend neck bust open. The son of a friend of ours that we grew up with in Jamaica. This is a sister, a year older than me, grew up with in Jamaica. When I left Jamaica at the age of 15, she was 16. Had a baby young. She was pregnant when I left Jamaica. Had a baby young. 2 years ago, young man just went to the airport to see off his auntie, the sister of the sister we grew up with. So we grew up with all of them, right? Know this young man as a baby. When I went back to Jamaica, he was there as a baby. He said, myself and my brother Bobo, your uncle Bobo, Shakara, taught him to play cricket. And he became a cricket enthusiast. 42 years of age, just dropped off his aunt, went and picked up his bike, his motorbike, going home, lives next door to where Aunt Cherry Shakara lives. My aunt, he lives next door to my aunt. Turn the corner, 5-man jump out, bye, shoot him up. Right?
Do you know what it is, Brother Leader? It's impossible for a nation to develop in such conditions of violence. It's impossible for a community to develop itself with that level, and this is why it's important for us to explore these things, because you know what I'm saying. But anyway, sorry, finish because I'm gonna contextualize.
This is a lived experience of ordinary people in Jamaica right now. You go to Jamaica right now, and it started when I was living in Jamaica. Everybody who can afford it have this thing called burglar bar. We used to call it burglar bars then. I have another more fancy name for it these days. I don't even know. I would call it something fancy. Now, all this metal that we have to be importing into the island for safety and security. And when you go to Jamaica and you see, it looks like a mass prison. Right? That's how we're living in Jamaica. That's what we have normalized.
Yes.
In Jamaica, right? This has to change.
Has to.
This has to change.
Has to.
Yeah.
So we have to link with our people in Jamaica, and we have to somehow, I don't know how we're going to do it, but this cannot be, we cannot continue to lose 2,000 of our young people every year in Jamaica. So that politicians who are defending neo-colonial interests can continue to survive.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Go ahead.
I think I agree with everything you say, and my own memory, in contrast to this 15 or 1800 people killed in the way you describe annually, is of a childhood where the murders that happened were notoriously few. Yeah.
Yes.
They're still on fingers of one hand. Somebody called Thaddeus Hyatt, this, that. They're notorious little murders, but they were isolated. That's why we knew about them. Right?
Yes.
Now, there's a contrast. Now, the point that I want to make, though, is that it seems to me, and I accept your description and the desperation of the current state of affairs, and so the issues about how we face it matter, and it seems to me that if you take down the class line, that confronts you with neocolonialism, and I don't see the forces lining up in opposition to that.
To it at the moment.
Around the race line, there is hope, because Jamaica, the majority of the population are a community of Africans. And as such, we should get into the business of working out what our interest as a community is and how it is to be defended, including defending against, suicide of the kind that your father was just describing. But and I do believe that it might make sense to separate the race and the class elements, which are actually closely linked. And
I was going to say,
and as African Jamaicans work on talking to ourselves about what we as an African Jamaican community can do for Jamaica and with Jamaica.
This is going to sound like a reversal of politics here, but I'm not sure you can separate.
No, I know the connection, and that's why I started it in the way that I did.
I understand.
Because, yeah,
I understand. I understand. So to touch on what both of you and Brother Leader are saying, and we're going to wrap up soon, yeah. And I'm not sure if we're going to have time to open up for audience interaction this week. Although I would love to, but
that's a shame.
Well, we'll see, because I wasn't planning to keep you on until 12 o'clock in the night again, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's get through.
Let's try for 11. Try for 11.
That may I say it's 25 to now, isn't it? So that's what I'm saying. So I'm not sure we're gonna have time. But to touch on what you both are speaking to, I'm gonna play you a video, yeah, of a brother, young virgin, what's about my age, who named I Nation, yeah, and he's quite well known because he's a book distributor and seller independently, yeah, and him come from Tivoli, yeah. And he speaks to this to some of the dialects that we're speaking about now in this excerpt. So I'm going to play this quickly, and we'll come back.
The dance them, the shatters them, especially the dance them, are ones who have enough influence, So even within my community, I start targeting for the man them, because I personally know them and accustomed to them,
So the dons are reading books.
Well, the main Dan does is I want to read a whole heap of book. I want to purchase a whole heap of book for my, and in the purchase rubbish, sieve through the box intently and take out book of substance,
Do you think that Dodos is misunderstood?
Yeah, in a sense, it's not just Dodos is misunderstood. The whole situation is very much misunderstood, because the thing bigger than Dodos, the thing is about power, and the thing is not about drugs or guns, or it have nothing to do with what Dodos have done, but the potential that Dodos hold, because Dodos was no longer a muscle of any politician. He no longer represented the JLP. What him represent, his authority represent the people, not within its full consciousness, but he must grow in there, and that's what the leaders and the authorities scared of. Dodos, if within any colonial society or nation, you need to have a stronghold that can withstand the state, that in case the state become a monster. And Western Kingston was that stronghold. If a revolution to kick in Jamaica today, there is no place that can withstand the state. The state would have run in and just squash the revolution right away. While with Tivoli Garden up and running, a revolution could kick and it could really be successful. So within due time, if Dodos get the full consciousness, them would allow him to get the full consciousness. The so-called incursion wouldn't be an incursion, that'd be a revolution.
Hey, do you remember getting your first car and you kept storing?
So I'm just playing that, yeah. Now he goes on in the interview. By the way, the person who's interviewing him is a sister by the name of Denisha Pendergrass. Yeah, she's Bob Marley granddaughter.
Bob Marley granddaughter. Yeah.
Mhm.
And quite a well-known social activist. You know, when there was issues to do with Pinnacle, the first Rastafari commune, and protecting it some years ago, she was, among the leadership of that kind of campaign. But he goes on later in the interview. Now we're back to dancehall now. We're go back to some dancehall vibration, dynamics, And in the early in the early 2000s, two artists became very popular in dancehall music. One was Vibes Cartel, and the other was Movado. And they had a feud that began to proliferate into violence, in the community. And so, as Brother Valida was saying, this gone beyond, PMP, JLP, Garrison now. This was basically people that were loyalists of the two artists, that were, and that their feud was manifesting itself in violence in communities. Dudus was one of the leading persons who fronted a show, called Western Kingston Jamboree, annually. And in 2009, iNation goes on to speak about Vibes Cartel and Movado come on stage and squash the beef between them, and Dudus is credited with being the influencer, or at least one of the primary influencers of that whole dynamic. Beef squash. This is 2009. Remember, Sativa Gardens happened in 2010. And so remember, so iNation now is a bookseller. He starts by selling books to artists, and as he's saying, then because him come from Tivoli, so him know the lay of the land, him start reach out to the Dandem and the people that are associated with the Dandem, and they're reading books. Elder says so. You began by saying that this man is an educated man, him an idiot, right? So now iNation is saying him do this come buy a book from him, and him not buy no idiot book, him read enough book, And he's saying this is iNation's assessment now, that he's growing in his consciousness. We're not advocate do this, we're just really a while ago. Right. What he's saying, and it wouldn't be the first time somebody of such a criminal proclivity finds an awareness, and a consciousness. That wouldn't be the first time that's happened. And it oftentimes, because you could say the same thing for a guy, his name's got my head now, Rick Ross, from America, was big in the crack cocaine thing in LA. But it took for him to go to prison before he realized how what he was doing in his own community connected to the American government, and the CIA, and so on and so forth, and rare. So I'm just putting that out there to say that in as much as all this is going on, you have people like iNation who are doing some work on the ground that can yield small fruits. Do you know what I'm saying? In certain ways. And we have no idea where that can go, given the correct climate. Do you know what I'm saying? For it to manifest itself properly. So just any reflection on what you heard from iNation a minute ago?
Tenamwari, I think that's a very credible angle to explore. From my perspective, not least because I've actually seen footage, and in fact, it's an analysis that I'm familiar with. And I almost, when I was making my most recent input into the discussion, I almost made reference to footage which I had seen in the wake of the Tivoli Gardens atrocity. Multiple footage where people were saying, the people of Tivoli Garden was shouting, "Me done with politician now, me done with politician.
Right.
Marcus Garvey words come to pass. I heard those kind of utterances.
Yes.
Yeah. I heard those kind of utterances, right? Politics, them politics and them politicians are not good. And those footage might still be on YouTube and wherever else. It might still be accessible, right? So I think it's a credible. And we have to factor in what our brother from iNations is telling us, right?
In terms of COINTELPRO, let's put it out there.
Right.
In terms of counterintelligence,
he seems to know what he's talking about. So I would connect that with some of the footage that I have seen, and it's interesting because Dodo's father, Jim Brown, who was arrested, and whilst in prison in Jamaica, having said publicly, whilst he was being transported to prison, said publicly, I think from the courthouse to the prison, that he's going to talk. He said those words as they were, taking him to the prison. Him going to talk, right? Him go open his mouth and him going to talk, right? And the next thing you know, his prison cell caught a fire, and he died in the prison cell. Just how does a prison cell catch a fire? Where am I in there? A cooker, a stove. How does a prison cell catch a fire? Do burn some maca inside there? So this thing, and this whole garrison thing, it goes right back at least to the 1960s. You talk about Jim Brown, but there was one Claude Massop before Jim Brown. I'm sure you know the name, right? Who came before Jim Brown. And on the other side, you had Feathermap. I can't even remember what his real name was, but I remember those names very well as a young man growing up in Jamaica. I remember hearing those names.
Yes.
Both of them were killed. Yeah.
Sorry, go
yeah.
So?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell them more.
I think that I want to repeat the oddly incredible line I came with, that that we African Jamaicans need to spend some time thinking about how we as a community can address the political culture conditions of existence that we find ourselves in that place. So I mean, I think that we should be trying. The iNation piece I find problematic, and I hear and respect what Brother Leader said, and I know that it's possible for revolutionary forces to arise from anywhere within any social formation. So at the individual level, stretching out into the organizational level, it's almost anything is possible. And what is being talked of as possible in this immediate context of ours is clearly possible. I have my doubts about it. I believe that if somebody grew up in Tivoli and experienced that in a certain way, saw Dudus in one of his capacities, which is the thinking intellectual, then it's perfectly possible to come to conclusions about what he was or what he could be. The reality of the Tivoli incursion should have shown iNation that there isn't a physical space that's defensible against the particular state that's there. So that argument against what was said needs to be on the table.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't exclude the possibility of progressive or even revolutionary moves arising from the areas of the society that we're talking about. But to be honest, and the other thing to say is that from that level, a whole heap of radical in the cultural frame stuff arises. I remember going to a dance hall show. It could have been one of the bigger ones while I was there, and the brother on the stage saying, "You don't have to worry about them lyrics unless you know press up." And right, so the social cultural critique that comes from that level of our society and from that strata of effectively creative artists. Not talking about Dudas now. I'm talking about
the artists. Them,
the artists is incredible. So, well, incredible is the wrong word, but powerful and real. And much is being said because they see what is going on. The other thing to say is that one of our singers and players of instrument, was it Anthony B, has a song about "Me Nah Vote Again," and that's a very good expression. The claim and the insight that's there amongst our people that JLP and PNP is not for them, and they're no longer voting, and they express a politics now only in terms of when somebody gets killed by the police, or when them can't get water, or them phone now there to the village or whatever, although the phone line business is now dead. So you see radicalism, but I wouldn't give credibility as a social analyst or somebody who tries to be a social analyst myself to the line that I heard in Brother iNation's thing, and clearly there's more of him that I need to look at. I hadn't heard of him. Of course. I hadn't heard of him before today. So, but all African communities worldwide need to be acting as African communities and looking to the analysis of the conditions of existence that we find ourselves in and how we can change them. And I think that is something that we must do in Jamaica as well as here.
Certainly. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, Tenai Mwari. Give thanks for that, Elder Cecil. Certainly food for thought. As you were speaking, the legacy of Papa Omowale Malcolm X came to mind, and where he
came from.
And there are shades of Dudus in the background to Omowale Malcolm X, to Tuki Williams. They sunk to the lowest, most antisocial type of behaviors in society: guns, drugs, pimping, accusation. Well, Papa Omowale Malcolm X was ever accused of murdering anybody, but certainly Tuki Williams was. And they experienced massive transformation, right?
Yes.
So don't get me wrong in what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that there is the possibility that there is some credibility in what the brother is saying from My Nations. It's an angle worth exploring, because there may well be more to the Tivoli Gardens atrocity than meets the eye. And that would not surprise me. I don't believe that some of the utterances that I heard in anguish from people from Tivoli Gardens, saying them done with politician, right? Saying Marcus Garvey words come to pass. We need another Marcus Garvey, right? I don't think that was said in a vacuum. There had to have been a context within their experiences within Tivoli Gardens. So there may well have been dynamics at play in Tivoli Gardens that was at the center of why what happened. We can't dismiss it.
I think it's intelligent, and especially if we know how these people operate. Yeah, them snuff out early. And the Omawale Malcolm X to have arisen from Tivoli may not have been Dudos. Yeah, it may have been somebody else, but we don't know about it. And you know what I'm saying? So we have to explore that. Okay.
The question is still out there as to why the government made that assault on the people of Tivoli Gardens, even though they knew that, according to some sources, Golding knew that Dudos was not in Tivoli Gardens, and he actually knew where he was, according to certain sources. So there are other dynamics at play.
We have to know about, brother leader, Elder Cecil, right? It's 5 to 11. Yeah, you let me know how much more time you can spare, and I'll make a decision, or we can make a decision on where to go from there. Go ahead.
I'm very much hoping that we will end at 11.
Right, no problem. That's fine. We're gonna have to save our conversation in terms of dynamics around the
and please bear in mind that I'm perfectly willing, indeed keen, to continue conversation with yourself and your father. So
no problem.
This is not the end.
I've already
agreed.
agreed.
The end of the beginning.
100%.
For the record, can I just say that the feeling is mutual?
100%. I've already agreed with you, Elder Cecil, because you did ask and you wanted to come on to deal with a particular subject in terms of existential crises, and so that has already been agreed. Yeah, so we are going to do that. Yeah, but I will respect that. What we're missing out is the conversation in terms of the reparations movement, CARICOM, and republicanism, getting rid of the queen, or the king, or whatever. So we'll save that conversation.
I'm ready to participate in that one as well.
Right? For another setting, or another sitting. So we give thanks and appreciate. And I hope ones have got something from this. If you have not watched part 1, I would encourage you to do so. Yes, watch part 1. There's a whole heap of background and information was shared. And hopefully I'm gonna do a few more of these in relation to other nations in Africa and the Caribbean. Coffee Campbell says, I'm just highlighting in the chat, big up to Talawa, and everything is everything, Diamond King, and everybody else that's in the chat. He said what was missing is solutions. Like I said, as what was said, we're going to come back and have some more discussion, although I suspect that the solutions that Brother Coffee is going to put forward will be, not in line. I should suggest that what you would put forward in terms of solutions will not meet Brother Coffee's approval, unfortunately. So but as has been said, we will come back to conversations.
Analysis is part of the process of solutions.
Of finding solutions, correct. And I find, and it's an important point, brother, that you just made, because
consciousness raising is part of the process of solution. Mass consciousness raising.
100%. When we were discussing the cultural element and Miss Law and so on and so forth, there was a debate taking place in the chat in relation to the relevance of this conversation to the economic realities of the people there. And I find that Africans who have their cultural and political problems solved, yes, by the West and Europeans tend to not value the role that things like language play in the development of economic systems and political systems, if that makes sense. So, for example, the English come, and learning English is a prerequisite, yeah, to being able to ascend within their society, right? You know what I'm saying? They export their language and their currencies and so on and so forth as a prerequisite for social and economic mobility, yeah. But when Africans want to develop, we should accept the European language and say, well, our languages are irrelevant, yeah, within the context of our own development, economic and political development. So, sorry,
the other side to that is, which Elder Cecil demonstrated so well, is that the whole process of the so-called the oppression, the exploitation, and the ripping of our culture and our language from us during slavery and colonialism, the discarding of our language and our culture as dispensable and foolishness and what have you, was about dehumanizing African people, rendering African people less than human beings. So the reclamation and the restoration of our culture, and including our languages, our names, is part of a process of restoring our humanity. That has to be central and fundamental to liberating ourselves. If we don't, we don't feel that sense of our own humanity.
But brother leader, that is with the assumption that, but I think Baba Obi Egbuna says, in order to free ourselves, we must make sure that we are ourselves, right? So if the issue for an individual is not nationhood and sovereignty and them kind of things there, then you're not going to be concerned about that, right? You're going to be concerned about forwarding the economic philosophy of Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman, and that's going to solve the problem, because all of the other cultural problems are solved for you because you can speak English and you have a British passport, whatever else. That's just the nature of the situation. So depending on what problems you are trying to solve is going to dictate the nature of the solutions that you engage, and that is where you're correct in the sense of analysis. Analysis is part of the problem solving mechanism, and so in that respect, we've got a whole heap of analysis from Elder Cecil and yourself, Brother Leader, today, and we want to give thanks for both. We are just after 11. I'm going to give you an opportunity both to say any closing words that you have briefly, and we'll close.
No, I don't particularly want to give any closing words. I think that there is massive scope for further discussion.
Yes, sir.
And I think that the people who believe that there are solutions to be thrown out in discussions like this don't really understand the problem.
Yes, sir.
We have to do a proper analysis of where we are and the problems of past solutions and the problem of current alleged solutions.
Yes, sir.
If we are to get to real solutions.
100%. Thank you very much, Brother Leader. Very quickly, as we can get if possible.
Yes, Tenaiwari, it's been a joy and an honor, once again, to share this platform with Elder Cecil and to support my son in the tremendous work that he's doing in terms of conscientizing our people. I would want to suggest that alongside the analysis that we must continue to do, the discussions that we must still have, so that we fully understand the nature of the beast that we are dealing with, is to also understand some of the forces that exist on the ground in Jamaica. You mentioned iNation. There are for Rastafari groups and communities in Jamaica. There's Miguel Lorne, who you had hoped
to engage,
if possible, to bring onto the show with us this evening. He is trying to revive. He's working on reviving Papa Garvey's People's Political Party. There is also a party that has established itself as a third party in Jamaica called the UIC, the United Independence Congress, which is worth looking at.
Right.
I'm still myself exploring and assessing. The leader's name is Joseph Patterson.
Patterson, yes.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know if Elder Cecil knows
probably no relation
to PJ. But so far, from what I've seen, his platform is interesting. It's worth exploring and assessing. He advocates a total obliteration of the present political system. That sounds like a good place to start. He thinks that the two existing parties are completely redundant. He speaks to some of the very issues that we have addressed on the program this evening. There are elements of revolutionary thinking in what he has to say. But for me, it's early days. It's a fledgling organization, and and also on the radio we have on RFM. We have Mutabaruka and people like Mutabaruka and Sister Kabu Ma'at Keru, who are pumping out very important programs and discussions and analyses
with solutions, Brother Leader, with solutions. Yes.
Challenging the contradictions and the serious crisis that is presented to the people, the African people of Jamaica presently. And again, it's worth tapping into to those programs and any other progressive, potentially revolutionary forces that we know of in Jamaica, connecting with them and working with them to give them strength and power, because I totally agree. Only revolution. There you go. Solution. We need a revolution in Jamaica, as we need in every part of the world where African people find themselves. So I close, as I always do, with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, who says, "Unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Rumbidzokuna Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory."
That's that kings and queens.
He said African race, though, not African people. And I'm always worried when people abandon the notion race as a notion people. But
hey, Nicky, that going around there, Me I advocate class analysis and Elder Cecil say, well, right now, that's race we are dealing with,
No. I'm not abandoning class. I'm not abandoning class analysis. I'm actually interested in what Europe has done with the word 100%. Race since the Second War.
Elder Cecil, you know what?
And the extent to which we're buying into it.
You know what, Elder Cecil? You need to go into that, because you tease me with this line all the while, and you said you got a broader analysis on it, and I agree with everything, and I've got things to feed into what you're saying, but I've never heard you expand upon it. So we have to do that at some point.
I come and do it on your platform.
Yes, you have to do it. Yeah.
I'll just say humbly, Elder Cecil, I haven't abandoned the word race.
I know you haven't. I know you
haven't.
It just kind of slipped in, and it's interesting that you're dealing with Marcus Garvey, and he said race, and you say people when you're quoting him.
in that sense, yes, I do, but I won't go into why. But I do see the point, and I do take the point that you are making, yeah, because it is a genuine issue, yeah. So
All right, Kings and
I don't have an argument with that.
So rise, you mighty race, tender morning.
Yes.
In fact, for unto the motherfucker, creator of the universe, because that was whom we could give praises unto our great ancestors, Abibi Tomi, Abibi Fahode, African liberation and African power for all African people. Ashe.
Ashe.